Hey guys, another impromptu study break, I suppose. Trying to get back into the grind of being a student. Thankfully, with the wild, wild west of the interwebs, schooling isn't what it used to be. Depending on how one looks at it, that could be a good thing, or it may be a bad thing. Attempting to cut to the chase as always. As you guys know, I've been rambly, and I'm looking at. Funny thing about this YouTube thing, I go in my attempts to keep up appearances. I see my little shaving accident. Oh yeah, cut to the chase. So one of the things going back to the discussion Retro Blasting had with Troy Pacelli, and again, I don't remember when that was. Might have been last year, might have been. And to echo what he said, there is plenty of merit to what he said. Said something to the effect of nerd is someone who knows a lot, and that amount of knowledge lends credence to landing a job. I forget if he said something to the effect of a well paying job. And not that retroblasting needs my help or, I don't know, anybody else's help, but I'll defend the homeboy when needed. And I'm sure he'll be the first to say he can defend himself. I'm sure he can in terms of online argumentation, yada yada. Don't need to belabor the point. But one thing, and I don't know, maybe he's realized it. I don't know if he needs to realize it. But I'll say this. What I get retroblasting in a lot of what he does is, and this is what I think nerding out means in my experience, though limited given the amount of time, years on Earth I've been, 40 plus. Uh, Attention to detail plays a role. Now, we can go up and down about how much attention to detail goes into that. But if I were to look at retroblasting and the craft and the work he puts into it, and also in Analog Toys, I don't know who fed who, and I know Analog Toys has given much credit to retroblasting in the development of his own crafting. I don't know about branding, but I know he thinks about these degrees of detail involved, from scripting to editing. And retroblasting is one of those types that he exhausts, I don't know, every avenue, but as many avenues as is necessary. So I'm sorry. I don't know if I should apologize, but retroblasting, you're a nerd in my eyes. I don't know if you need my encouragement or if you need my degrees of affirmation placed upon you, but you're a nerd in my eyes. I don't know if you need that validation, but in my definition, I guess you can say that my view of what a nerd is, your level of attention to detail, I don't know who to compare it against or what to compare it against, but I admire the attention to detail paid. It's not like any other I've come across on YouTube. Now, granted, my exposure to YouTube, though diverse, I'll admit, maybe not as much depth, but when it comes to nerding in, nerding out, as I try to describe this video being about, I'm going to pivot quickly to the NFL. And there are many dimensions to nerding out. I remember a scuttlebutt, a point a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, made about football, particularly when it comes to players being paid to do what would seem like simple tasks. You're being paid to catch a pigskin, or in basketball terms, you're being paid to catch a basketball, shoot a hoop, and there is a lot of work involved. But depending on what percentage of the pie, and I look at these like I have my ethos pie. I call it an ethos pie because I have a multitude of mindsets I was raised with, okay? Or perspectives I was raised with, whether from my parents, dealing with my siblings, dealing with my friends, dealing with people I've come in contact with. So, likewise, when it comes to subjects, in this case, what retroblasting does, going back to him, if you want, you just gotta, me, study break and spitballing like I've been doing, given I have the availability. Just random spitballing, things that I've been trying to Dumbledore out of my head onto the screen and to your ears, hopefully your mind. So as far as going back to NFL football, there are many slices of the pie of football, and particularly NFL football, because particularly, and this is something I came across in conversation. It's a funny question. I think I got that one yesterday. Ancestrally, my family hails from the Philippines. I was born there, came to the US at the age of 1, so just a baby, lived in America most of my life. And to rehash the point, I ended up a citizen before my 18th birthday. Okay? And to clarify and to reiterate and to confirm, I gave up my prior citizenship, and so I'm solely an American citizen. Take it for what that's worth. So going back to the topic of football, just the sport itself. Of course, you got to know the rules, got to know the scoring dynamics. That's all good and well. And I nerded out, as I mentioned before, I nerded out on various aspects of the game. So both from a player's perspective and from a coach's perspective. And I think I mentioned how I had gone to my local library years ago, even as a teenager, just reading the tradition of coaches, their view on things, their take on things, their philosophy. And believe it or not, that is just a couple of slices of the pie. There's more to that. And so we look at the total package of NFL football. You said you were taking a study break. So what's the... Oh, I'm studying? What am I studying? Well, thanks to the wild, wild west of the interwebs, there are learning opportunities. Particularly, so if you do any loose scouring or inundated with a lot of Facebook ads, if you're on Facebook, or I've been inundated with a lot of learning opportunities and being rather realistic. So, a few off the top of my head: holistic nutrition, naturopathic practitioner, medical office and billing. That is probably the more or most legit among the ones I'm taking. Chinese medicine, kinesiology, Christian counseling is another one I just signed up for. So that's what I'm studying. On top of that, I do have a Rosetta Stone package that I need to get back onto, along with another unit in Cantonese I've been meaning to get onto. So, studying is on my docket. So, as I said, the NFL football is like a great pie in terms of size. Depends on how you look at it. It depends on how you look at it. And I know a lot of people have their MacGuffins about NFL nowadays. Particularly even when you look at the NBA, you on one level the NFL can be seen as rigged. A lot of former players will kind of say otherwise. I think in the NBA too, they'll have their MacGuffins. Let's see, I completed my master's. Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. Like completing your master's, I totally get it. Um, One of the things I'm trying to tell the younger folks, whether they're still in school or they're about to finish their undergrad or they're about to embark on their undergrad, I try to give them wisdom from my own experience. And that's one thing I still combat with my mom about. Because growing up, she was all about education, education, education. Now, keep in mind, my mom lost her parents, both of her parents, by the age of 14. So she lived a pretty hard knock life with herself and her, I think, three siblings or four. I'm trying to remember. So, and of course, with being a first gen immigrant and that experience and whatever struggles immigrants may undergo, I understand where she was coming from. Could she have couched statements better? Could she have positioned the phrasing better? Maybe. But that's always the thing about hindsight, right? Hindsight being 2020. So I am just fascinated that this giant pie that is called the NFL, and I'm just thinking giant in terms of size, and the many slices that people want to, you can do it with the NFL itself as a product. That within this giant product, you might have 20 slices. Depends on how deeply you want to look at it. And so, what I gleaned from my exposure to NFL, so like I mentioned in my last impromptus, I got inundated with the NFL world thanks to ESPN, video games, particularly the Madden series. And when I started getting more cognizant of watching the product on screen, for whatever reason, NFL on Fox. I don't know too much of the history, but I know John Madden. He had come from CBS, as did I think a lot of the current, or I would say a lot of the people who had done the NFL packages for Fox. They went from CBS to Fox. Now, when they got the NFL package for the NFC teams, as I understand it, their presentation, that theme song, was a major hook. Oh man, you're on the other side of the world from the looks of it. Well, thanks for the scuttlebutt, man. Hope you get some good rest. So, the NFL and Fox. And it was like I don't know if they intended it when they, and I played John Madden football. Like I didn't know how big it would have become because I was introduced to John Madden football through a friend of relatives of mine. We went to the apartment and he had the John Madden football for his Sega Genesis, and I think also we rented a a few versions of the game for the Super Nintendo because that's what we had. And that was my exposure. And I think I played some computer football games. But something about, I think it was Madden 1995? I don't think it was 94, but Madden Football 95. When they got the rights and Madden joined Fox, when you launched the game, that opening hook that Fox still uses to this day, it still sent, in my mind at the time, it sent goosebumps. Okay? So that's just one slice of the pie out of however many slices you want to concoct when you look at the overall NFL landscape. So this is just part of the nerding out process. Just the product. Again, you can go between 5 slices to 20, depending on how far you want to take it. You know how obsessive, and I'll say that I'll be upfront about that. Ooh, that was strange. Yeah, I got. I'm working through this. Anyway, guys, so that was like one of the major slices of pie I got exposed to at the time. And of course, in the midst of it all, it was Fox versus NBC in some ways versus ESPN because ESPN at the time had the Sunday night package. And then of course ABC still had the Monday Night Football. And as I got older, maybe in the last 10 years, I got interested in the salary cap dynamics. I knew it was a factor when it came to team performance, especially when I was really a fan of the 49ers. And of course, when we talk about, especially when you read stuff from the former players, they talked about how much they were making. And I think Bill Walsh opened up about that in some of his books. I think in some of his literature, Bill Walsh talked about how much he was making himself, and then also some of what the players were making. And even as I was following players more closely, not too closely, but closely enough where you kind of got to read about how much they were making and how that all works and how teams are now navigating the phenomenon known as a salary cap. And that creates another venturing into that pie. So whether we're talking NFL or in some cases the NBA, because the NBA's got something like that too, it's funny how what makes the NFL salary dynamics a little bit more compelling in the scuttlebutt more interesting is because the NFL has a tension where a lot of the player contracts they are not guaranteed. Whereas in other leagues, like I think NBA, I think hockey, I could be wrong. Anyone who wants to check that for me, I'm more than happy to be either confirmed or say, hey, no, bro, it's actually this. I'm open to that. But the NFL was so compelling is because they have taken on, at least domestically, and they're trying globally. But what makes it interesting, at least domestically, is I don't know if they're actually cutting into the revenues of the other leagues, but the NFL has become quite the talk of the town compared to the other leagues. I think, in terms of what makes it so interesting in terms of salary dynamics, is the use of TV revenue and how that ties into the paying of players. And of course, with the trends of the cap growing outside of the pandemic year, the salary cap, which enables teams to pay their players, that's been fascinating because a lot of teams, and this is another thing that I would look into in terms of the slices of the pie. The detail that I mentioned, the attention to detail with respect to the NFL itself, just thinking about all the scuttlebutt, the bargaining, the player movements, when to cut a player, when to sign a player. Just getting those pieces of information and those slices of the pie keep adding up. And in terms of nerding out, that's what makes the NFL very fascinating. And I'll admit, I'm not as in tune with the NBA just because, at least from a league standpoint and from an entertainment value, I don't know about you guys, but there's something to be said having a season too long, and in some ways, I don't know about you guys, a season being too short. You want that happy medium where, in some respects, the games matter. As a spectator, whether you prefer to watch it on television or on your computer screen nowadays, or in person at the stadium. Now, I did another live talking about the dynamics of watching games at a venue live. I honestly think it's not worth the time, depending on how far you live from the stadium. Like I said, growing up in San Diego and going to a Padre game, and again, I shout out Michelle. You know who you are. Thank you for hooking up my mom and us with those tickets to Padre games where the seats were actually decent, not shabby at all, not bleachers. I saw the players very well from where we're sitting. It's just the hubbub. I don't know about you guys. I don't know what your take is about watching sporting events live, but I've gone to my share of A's game. Shout out to my bro Ukulele. He was very gracious whenever I came to Oakland to visit him, and we would watch an A's game, and that can be a grind in itself. Getting in line for the concessions, making sure you get to your seat, and that's when even going to a theater, for example, seat traffic. I don't know about you guys, but you go to a seat and you're like, excuse me, not wanting to cause a ruckus where people in the seats, and it's all good and well. But like for example, baseball, I do have a Padre hat, and if I say like who was my baseball team, I had no interest in a lot of teams, and so I defaulted to the hometown Padres, just because I've been to my share of Padre games, and I did follow a few of the players, like Tony Gwynn, rest in peace. But the game of baseball, particularly from a viewer standpoint, and the way it's presented, going back to the NFL pie, the way they broadcasted the game, particularly with Fox, that theme, that hook, it still resonates for me anyway. They kept it. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. And baseball, on the other hand, for example, 162 games. I don't know about you guys. But I don't care because the games don't matter until, for all you seasoned baseball fans, when do the games start to count for you? When do they start making you feel like you're on the edge of your seat? At least credit the NFL. Well, I'll say this. For football, with a lot of the scuttlebutt, and this is where people have a vote, you can tune out the noise because the funny thing about NFL scuttlebutt is the premature proclamations of this is a Super Bowl contender, this is not a Super Bowl contender. They keep saying it's a week to week league. You make it that way because you are a prisoner of the moment, whether you want to admit it or not. It's easy to become a prisoner of the moment. And so, on one level, it does make it more compelling because you only have 17 games to work with. And yeah, that makes the stakes a little bit higher. And yes, it makes you feel like you want to tune in. But I'm the type that kind of, if people were to ask me, well, what do you think about this team? What do you think about that team? And I have a good friend who we agreed we're not going to make any prognostication or make any predictions or anything about a team or teams, not until the halfway point plus. Given there are 17 games for the NFL pie, we usually say, give it 9 weeks, then we'll know where we're at. But going back to the NFL pie, there's just so many slices to it that you can nerd out on, roster dynamics, salary dynamics, particularly when it comes to teams and ownership and how they generate extra revenue. Because the other part of that is you have the salary cap to contend with, which if you follow or dig up Andrew Brandt, he does a good job of explaining how the salary cap works. And he says something very poignant, and it resonates to this day. The cap is very much accrual-based accounting. And a lot of former players call, salary cap being funny money, monopoly money, because you could always move it around, shuffle it around. And, they talk about, quote, cooking the books in other business landscapes. But the other thing that other businesses talk about, and again, going back to the slices of the pie, just general nerding out about money flow. The other word is cash flow. And this is where, when you look at business ownership, team ownership, like, for those who don't know, there are owners who own teams in multiple leagues. The name Kroenke, I forget if he owns the Rams. I forget what else he owns, but I know it's been stated over the airwaves what other teams he owns. And for example, let's take the Chiefs. And for those who don't like the Chiefs, for those who like the Chiefs, they're another example. Because their football stadium, and I think other teams are attuned to this, and I'm sure there are plenty of teams attuned to this. They use their stadiums, they use their arenas to host other events. Like, I think me being a Niner fan, I'm aware they use Levi's Stadium to host other sporting events. I think they hosted either a concert, they hosted a college football game or playoff. And so it's not just the one team. And if I remember the scuttlebutt, in terms of the ownership, they actually, someone within the infrastructure of the Niners owns a slice of the Liverpool Football Club. So it is interesting. And I don't know if that was a thing even decades ago. I don't know when it started becoming a thing, but cash flow is very important. And that's a way to keep things going. That's what makes sports leagues compelling. And yeah, I may not be the biggest hockey fan. I just remember growing up watching hockey with the likes of Gretzky. It's funny growing up in a certain era, particularly with the 80s and 90s. I wasn't around for the Laker heyday, but the names are still present in the 80s, and I grew up starting to follow the Lakers. But it was well before their heyday with Magic Johnson, and the names were still there. They hadn't won another championship, I don't recall. The only time that I remember the Lakers, and I think this is during the days of Kobe and Shaq, that's when they came back to prominence. Hey there. Hey, Matt Cave Gaming. Well, thanks for tuning in, man. Speaking of games, I have yet to show my Super Famicom games I have of football. I had this thought in my head, like, well, how did they get away with this? You'd be surprised. I don't follow the NFL, but I'm a lifelong. Yeah. So yes. That's the funny thing. It's like I may not be a follower of the NHL, may not be a nerd in the MLB. I only remember the Ken Griffey Jr. games. I'm going into your house, Matt Cave, because I may not have liked hockey that deeply, baseball that deeply, but I played my Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. I played Bases Loaded on the Nintendo. I played Blades of Steel. I play. I even had. I think it was these baseball games. I even got a baseball game on Steam. Yeah, uh, you'd be surprised. I think at the Retro Gaming Expo, as I explained when you were talking about retro gaming, Matt Cave, I went to the Retro Gaming Expo, as I said, and there's this vendor. I love it because it's the only convention that I find worth my money. Even though it got up in price, I think I explained that. It went almost double or triple. I forget. I get it. Businesses' needs are what they are, and things increase in costs. I can't change that. I don't think any of us can. So there are various vendors, and one of them had a deal on sports games, and I just go, oh, that looks intriguing. But going back to the whole thing about video games, you know, it's very fascinating. It would be my gateway into other sports. Yes, like I mentioned in my other impromptus, man, I played volleyball. I played baseball in the parks. I love my basketball here and there. I remember growing up, my buddy and I would do Olajuwon versus Ostertag duels in my driveway. And so, you know, I did play the. I forget. Matt Cave, do you remember when they were sending out those? If you're still watching Matt Cave, do you remember those game discs Sony sent out, or whoever sent them out? I think it was like when the PlayStation magazine came out. Talk about a relic of the ages. They had a I think it was dubbed PSM back in the day, and they would send us demo discs. Talk about, I don't know what you would call it, man. It's like marketing without real marketing. That's like the best marketing. Like, hey, let's check this out. We were sending you demo discs. Cool. Yeah, the demo disc. And I remember playing the NHL games available on the PlayStation. I may not have been the hockey fan that I know many people are, but I just like playing certain sports games. I remember the funniest game I think we rented on the Super Nintendo, believe it or not, man, was I think it was a Caesar Palace game. Did you ever try that game out, Matt Cave? Did you ever get exposed to that game? I think they had that on the major systems at the time. I think it was Super Nintendo, Genesis, and I forget if if it was on anything else. So it was like we played that, and I hate to put it this way, but that's how I treated my experience with slot machines whenever I visited my folks. Yep, and it's the same thing when I played the horse racing game on the computer. Yeah, again, I played a lot of football games more than I remember. I think even on the Apple IIe or even on the Tandy, we would play a version of football. And again, it goes back to my experience, you know, and I don't know. I don't know what's with people's aversion to video games back in the day. But I think someone brought up years ago in a post somewhere that video games lend to a creativity. They they breed it into a person's mind, right? And also, I think the other part was it taught problem solving, or it taught strategy or tactics, and that's one thing I appreciate about my going through the video game experience the way we had it. Now, I don't know if it's been an ebb and flow, but I'm at a point in most video games, and I think you might have heard me say it, whether in other live streams or in other impromptu lives I've done for myself, that I've kind of, I don't know if I come full circle, but I'm coming to the realization I got a job so I can afford the games I couldn't afford back then. And there's a point where the rubber met the road in terms of my own requirements. I don't know about you, Matt Cave, but I don't need the greatest graphical looking game. I want something that plays well. And I think I had scuttlebutts where I talked about the old Game Pro magazine, their rating system, and I thought theirs was the best at the time. I don't remember the other magazines and their rating systems, but Game Pros stuck out the most because they had the icons when they looked at their ratings. It was using. Do you remember they were using facial expressions? Let's see what you got to say. Exactly. In, and I'm at a point where that it's like this incidental nerding out when it comes to my weighing requirements, and given that I run Linux on my machine more or less full time, and it's not like an outright refusal. Okay, maybe it is. I haven't jumped into my Windows 11 partition knowing what I know now about Windows 11. It's just like, that love-hate relationship, and it just, the meter goes on the other extreme. I'm at the hate extreme right now for Windows 11, and so maybe out of necessity, my baseline's changed, my requirements really changed, and that as long as I can launch the game and I can play it, I'm good. And is the game fun to me? That's most important. That's and so I am. Part of my nerding out experience is just testing compatibility. Is the game? What do I have to do to keep the game sustainable? Things like that. I like, especially when you hear the stuff about GTA 6. It's almost like I'm at the point where, okay, that's great. Pigs fly. I mean, until pigs fly, then I'll play the game. And I know a lot of people got a MacGuffin about the Switch 2. there's only so much outrage I can withstand. Like, you just gotta tell me, and it's like me in the news. Tell me when something new happens. I don't need you raging every day about the same thing, and that's where I'm at with a lot of YouTube. Once you are getting too angry, I think I mentioned in a previous impromptu, life is too short to remain angry. You have every right to be angry. You can vent. That's all good. Let it out. But once it's out and it's in the ether, I get it. But at some point, you got to walk on, as Bruce liked to say. I think I even had a shirt saying "walk on." Walk on. Just why carry the baggage with you? Life is too short to keep that baggage with you. It's like you should have left that baggage in baggage claim. Yeah, we got to focus on things we actually like, or at least that will. I think I had a conversation with my nutritionist about that. You want the conversation to keep flowing because we need that movement of information. We need that conversation to keep happening. And I think we're at a stage where, for whatever reason, we're afraid to have that conversation. We need the conversation though, because we need it moving. And so it's like, what else is there needing to be? What else is there we need to know about the Switch 2? If you already made a resolution like you're not going to get it, okay, cool, move on. I like, for me, there's only so much I need to know. Like, I still got my Switch 1 that I honestly have forgotten to charge more than once. I'll get back to it. It's weird because, believe it or not, I'm very bad about new technology. Like, even smartphones. I think I've exhausted everything I needed to exhaust about smartphones. I think there was a point where I said, that's all good and well, that's all fun, but I need my phone to be a phone. So I I've lost track about how many phones I've gone through, from a Trio, Palm Trio. Does that ring a bell for long time techies? Started with a Trio, and I swore to myself I would never get a smartphone because I go, what's the point? Uh, so I went from that, and I went to a BlackBerry. I went from a BlackBerry to an Android, and I had my forays into. Let's see. I really like the Switch 2, and like, yeah. See, if and I think it's like, you can have all your rages about the Switch 2, and it's all good to know. That's all good scuttlebutt. And it's all part of the nerding out. These are the details that I'll hold relevant. Okay, good to know. Maybe or maybe not, I will adopt. And I don't like using blanket statements like, uh, what is my least favorite is everything in moderation. It's almost like an excuse to do X, Y, or Z. But the other one is, if it brings you joy and if you like it, you do you. I think there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you know what you're getting into. I think that's the thing. As long as you know all those factors and you still pull the trigger, great. We all have a vote. And what's that phrase I'm getting in the Facebook scuttlebutt? Informed, I think it's the term informed consent. As long as you know what you're getting into, cool. Good. That's all good and well. And and it's like me when it comes to like, do I feel compelled to upgrade my system? It's very tempting. See, that's the thing. Like what I straddle with is whether or not to redo my entire Linux system just because it might be fun, but it's a lot of work. So it's talking about a nerding out, an attention to detail that, I think my friend and I both agreed we're at this point in our lives where we just want it to work. And at the same time, my resistance is, yeah, if I wanted to work, I would have gotten a Mac, which I have. But the thing is, my Mac isn't the daily driver I know it can be. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I got to overcome and repent of my, I don't know what it would be. I honestly don't know what it would be because it's like, I have to demonstrate it one of these days. If you haven't used a Mac, you know how easy it is to uninstall a Mac application. Let's see. Our love for gaming and technology is amazing, but certainly, yeah. I'll tell you what though, when it comes to uninstalling a Mac program, you just go to the application folder, right? You take the icon for your corresponding app and you drag it into the trash can. And it's gone! At least what I don't miss about uninstalling the Windows applications. Because oftentimes when they talk about, well, when you uninstall a Windows program, it's not really uninstalled. I should know. I troubleshot QuickBooks for as long as I did. I think it was 2 years plus. And of course, there are these tools made available by Intuit. They're public facing, so I'm not revealing anything I can't. Okay? I did sign an NDA for my last employer. I don't think I'm doing anything against that. It's public knowledge. So QuickBooks has what's called a clean install tool. That's kind of like, hey, Windows, did you do the job you're supposed to do? Because you got to delete the folders. Again, attention to detail. Got to delete the folders. You got to go into that bloody Windows registry. And I still remember my PTSDs of dealing with the registry when I was doing my computer repair education. Oh my God, I don't miss it. And Linux has a way from the command line to uninstall a program also. I just run a command and then go, as long as I use the appropriate package management in my distribution. Yeah, Windows leaves. Yep, I don't miss that. I don't miss it at all. That's in the reason why I'm at Cave. I don't go into my Windows 11 partition. Plus, the updating experience is like a box of chocolates. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. Because when I supported Surface for that year and change, talk about the virtues of a call center career, you start picking up skills. I supported Surface and there was a kerfuffle happening with one update. And we had these contingencies. If they call about this update, here's where you would go to undo an update. At least when I update in Linux, I have a choice. I don't have to. I'm not compelled. I like to be on the bleeding edge a lot of the time, but at the same time, I'm not forced to. It's not like I have a gun to my head where it says, "Hey, update or else." No, I don't have to. Mac, I haven't seen anything in my Mac usage where I would get pause. Are there things reported about Mac updates? Sure. But it's not to the level where your system is bricked, or at least inoperable. And one of the things that I noticed when I supported Surface was, is it Windows or is it the hardware choice on the part of the manufacturers of Surface? Because one of the other things was they had chosen a certain chip for their Wi-Fi where the quick fix was uninstall or remove the device, rescan and detect, and oh, there's your Wi-Fi card. Let's see here. I never learned. Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt about, especially, and I brought it up in my transition videos to Linux, and I've been very lazy about putting together a guide. Apparently, there's a guy in the interwebs. His name is TZ Burton on YouTube, I think. And I don't know if he was serious, and I'm willing to put things out. I did put a guide on Slackware. I'll say this. When I went back to Linux in 2010 after dabbling here and there in 2003, I think, that's as early as I remember trying it. No matter the distribution of Linux, a lot has happened, even especially nowadays. The safety net is wide, and that's good. I think that's good for a lot of newbies. I don't like using that word often, but noobs. But for those who want to test the waters, there's a lot there that won't make you feel discouraged. And part of my own thinking when it comes to that stuff is I'm very hesitant to chime into boards just because I don't want to come off as a noob, because part of my own exposure and upbringing is after reading like 2 pages of a book or a manual, I'm like, all right, just dive in, because sometimes I fall asleep when I read guides. It's like, okay, that's all I need to know. I just need to set up my storage and let it rip. And that's how I've learned since. And I do have lessons learned from my own errors. And I think one of my martial arts instructors put out a quick short about, I hope your kids fail. I think he said, they fail spectacularly, because at least you learn what you got to work on. And so that's something that we can't be fearful of dreadfully. There's fear and dread. I think that's part of life. And we fear the unknown, and that's natural. I get it. Particularly when people are like, "Oh my God, Windows 10." Yeah, and I get it. Again, it's just a matter of informed, whatever, consent. Yes, and I think I got that even during my engineering technician, because I had the same teacher for those 2 other courses, electronics and computer repair. I had the same teacher in high school. I don't know if he's kicked the bucket yet, but Mr. Brown was awesome. One of my favorite teachers. Still the most important lesson I ever learned: how to write instructions on making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Talk about messy hands when it was all said and done. I think we all ended up with messy hands. A lot of peanut butter and jelly on our hands. I'll say that much. Because he did a good job of playing stupid. And he taught me how to play stupid, because he asked the questions not many people would think of asking. And he made it very clear when we experienced making these sky bunnies. He wanted, our project was experience putting together a sky bunny and rewriting the instruction set as if the person doing this was like an 8-year old. Talk about lessons learned, and that still sticks to me to this day. And that's guided me wherever I've gone, whether that was, especially when I was doing TA work and I was grading kids. And they said, "You're a hard grader." I said, "I only give the grade you deserve." And I would, and one of the things, I don't know, Matt Cave, if you've experienced this in your educational ventures, but one of the worst things I had when I was going through my undergrad, particularly because I was an English major, I would get I'd get chicken scratch for feedback. "Hey there, I am doing well. I'm chillaxing. I did what I needed to do given my employment situation." Again, it's all about playing the game. I'm getting used to the phrasing of gamification. Let's put it that way. Gamifying whatever it is, so I can obtain whatever benefits I've been afforded. So I can't complain. And as I told my priest over the weekend, I said, I'm taking the opportunity I can to breathe, because you never know when you'll get that opportunity to breathe again. I don't know. You are from... Hello, oh, from Turkey. I don't know what the time difference is. I knew I had someone who said he had to go because it was 2 a.m. in his neck of the woods. Hope it's not too late where you are. But Matt Cave, I don't know what your experience was like in school, whether high school, college, if you ever got chicken scratch for feedback. It was weird. I was reading feedback and I'm trying to decipher it, right? And so one of the things I tried to do was when I would, depends on how I received a draft. And one of the things I appreciate, and I'll give Microsoft credit for this. I don't like doing it. But they had an area, I think it created a sidebar or margin, if I remember, where you can put your feedback. If it was paper medium, I made sure my feedback was very specific. And I would ask questions about this, particularly when it came to these reflection prompts during a math class. Because the AVID program I was part of was very particular about the experience. And so they would cover math problems, and they would ask questions about the experience and using the collaborative effort and the Socratic method in solving their own struggles with math problems. And so I would get a lot of blank, or what you would call blanket statements or responses to these prompts. And so I would ask pointed questions, and I made sure of that. It wasn't, well, that response sucked. I would say, well, think about this. What about the experience? You know, what about the only write in cursive? Yeah, believe it or not, there are some things I experienced in my own exploration of cursive writing itself. And it was only like over time in history that I realized, oh, that's how I should write this character. It's like learning the method to the madness of cursive. That was a revelation, and that's one thing. Again, giving credit where it's due to my own mother. I love my mother. Okay, I love my mother, and my sister and I, we talked about it. Like, yeah, we love our mother, but our relationship is what it is for a reason. But if I have to give her credit, our learning, whether she wants to admit it or not, was rather experiential. We learned by doing. And so I learned by doing. And so the more I wrote in cursive lately, the more I saw and I observed, oh, that's how I write that character clearly. And I don't know. I didn't set out deliberately writing the most clear cursive. It just happened, right? You don't see here. When our generation ends up in the old folks home, our what is it? Our second language will be cursive. The that's true. The kids the kids running the facility have no idea. That is true. I don't know. I hear mixed things about whether or not cursive is being taught still. I don't know. I'll figure a way to ease it in. Like I help teach high schoolers from my parish. I'm more of a peanut gallery guy. Try to give them things to think about because I still think, and I don't know. I wrestle with this even to this day, and it's a tension, and I think tension is healthy. It's easy to want to feel understood, but I'm sure many have come before me having similar bouts. But at the end of the day, I almost feel like I'm going to be a lone wolf in a lot of things. In some ways, what good would it do? It's like you have something important to say, but I forget where I read it or heard it. Even if someone were to come back from the dead, do you think the people would listen? So that's what I wrestle with. Do I want to lord that over people? And that's been something floating in my head for a while now is, I have ideas, but I don't think I'm the first to have that idea. I just find that a lot of a lot of what's going on with the kids these days is we dump a pile of information. And I'm not much of a revolutionary, but I think there's a need to overhaul infrastructure naturally, organically, authentically. And there is something to be said about a personal experience and a personal encounter, dealing with the person. And it's a dynamic tension with helping the person, which then can help the greater good. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think there is something where we all like a blanket statement, we all like a panacea, because we don't want to do a lot of the guesswork, a lot of the legwork. And I'm kind of that way too. But at the same time, we have to understand, people are people. And why should it be? You know the rest if you know your Depeche Mode. Oh, yeah. People are people, so why should it be? We get along so awfully. I think that's the lyric. But, yeah. Again, I'm just spitballing. I'm just nerding out on things. Again, there I go with attention to detail. And see, I'm going on multiple subjects, but I think it's important when we talk about exploring different phenomena, like what we were talking about with what Matt Cave and I just started talking about, our exposure to to the various gateways that give us appreciation. I never would have thought. I think that's the thing when it comes to sports games or shooter games, even the FPSs. You know what I'm talking about. And this is what makes me lament about the state of online gaming. I don't know. I don't know what your take is, Matt Cave, if you're still watching, but when I got back into online gaming or tried back in 2010 or 11, I go way too young. And then when I started supporting Xbox, uh, yeah, I'm not going to do online gaming. But the thing about online gaming or network gaming is it does teach a level of coordination. You know, you got to get it where you can get it. Like, I don't know if I were to do it all over again, would I have gone a different route? No, but I'm thankful for my exposure. I think my brother and I were both equally, in certain parts, inspired by our exposure to Madden. Let's see what you got to say. I mostly play games. Oh, single player games. Yeah, these. Yeah. Yeah, I tried doing that with some coworkers, I think even just 10 years ago or 9. We were trying to play, I don't know why they call it Arma, but it was dubbed Armed Assault when it first came out. Forget when the first one came out. The Bohemia interactive game that was a very, I think it's from the same guys who did Operation Flashpoint. So the mindset in the game was very tactical. And this is one of the distinctions I got with among the various shooters. Like, for whatever reason, I think my friend tipped me, even during my buddy in high school, tipped me about the distinction among shooters. Like, I think the first title he mentioned was Star Siege Tribes. And he talked about it as action strategy. I go, okay. And then I got into the Clancy, the Rainbow Six series. And so that's where I was more inclined because, yeah, I was aware of the Call of Duty series, and I more enjoyed the single player campaign because it was objective based, and yeah, it I don't know if it was any more realistic than your run of the mill strategy. Let's see, I grew up with the introduction of online multiplayer and loved the. Yep, I remember doing that in the early aughts, and if I had known better, it's weird. I don't know about you. I don't miss lugging my full tower. It's almost as though like I gotta have two machines. If I had to do it over again, I would have had one machine dedicated for LAN parties, meaning that I had to make sure the case I used was not a physical. It wasn't a physical chore. Do I miss my CRT? More than you can count. Something about the CRT TVs that we kind of lost sight of when it comes to the whole phenomenon surrounding what you get nowadays with the whole blue light thing, and people, and I notice this a lot on social, people sporting their their blue light blockers or something. I mean, I've got my pair right here. But yes, if I had to do it all over again, and if they had the technology, I would have like, okay, I got my LAN party machine, and I would have gotten a flat panel, or a flat panel would be the correct term, so I can lug it, and then I keep my CRT for like a bona fide. Recently got pulled into gaming. Oh, is that the Arc? Arc Raiders. I tried. Well, there was another Arc ARK and I think my old coworker was trying to get me to play Ark Evolved, and my machine at the time. It's funny when we look at the games, and again going back to my whole troubleshooting modalities at the time. I forgot to bring up the story. I don't remember mentioning it at all, but Matt Cave. I don't know if you played any of the 007 games if you're still watching, but the I remember it was a big deal, particularly when after 00, I think it was GoldenEye was the big 007 game in the gaming world at the time, and then after that, there were multiple games on different platforms. I think it was Nightfire. Okay, Nightfire eventually made its way to the PC, and talk about a misfire on my part. I was just thinking, why is this game running so crappily on my machine? And I had gotten talk about my troubleshooting modalities, particularly when it came to swapping. Talk about part swapping I probably didn't have to do. Was it fun? Sure. Did it give me a little bit of a bragging right? Maybe. Like I swapped out both my processor and my graphics card, and the game still ran like crap. Like, oops. If I had known any better, talk about nerding out. Why is this? Why is this game not? And we forget. Talking about, and this is something that a friend of mine, that same friend, talked about poorly written game engines. And it's really fascinating when I see the landscape of gaming nowadays. I don't know what I would describe it as, but using the same code base, because they talk about the Unreal Engine, Unity, blah, blah, blah. I'm not too in tune with that, but I know a lot of games are written using a similar or identical foundation, and they go from there. And so we forget, particularly when it comes to things like the new games apparently coming out or about to come out, we forget the experience is determined a lot by proper coding and in certain ways proper optimization. And people forget that side of the equation. And that's why on one level, I'm not too big into the hardware wars. I think there have been examples in history, in the gaming world anyway, I think also in the PC world, that having spectacular hardware doesn't mean much if the game isn't optimized or if the software isn't optimized. I think I noticed that particularly in the smartphone world. Like, it takes two to tango with respect to a good user experience. And I'm still getting used to the verbiage UX or UX is I think of the term now. User experience. But something has to be said about the two-way street of hardware and optimizing software to meet the specialties of a given hardware. I mean, I forgot what the YouTube channel name is. Pixel something. I'm so bad. But I've watched his deep dives, particularly when it came to the Game Boy. It may have had the cream spinach color, and it may have given Sega more credence to the phrase what Genesis does what Nintendo don't. And I remember the cutthroat marketing for the Game Gear versus Game Boy. Like, cream spinach color. Yeah, But that cream spinach color gave you a lot of playtime. And 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 that is one of the geniuses of Nintendo when they get it right. They were able to squeeze a lot out of that lemon, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, hardware specs may be fascinating on paper, but if you don't have the right games and if it's not optimized, the hardware doesn't mean jack. So I know a lot of people are whining about, well, this is supposed to be the new iteration of the Switch. Why does it only have this kind of hardware? It should be much better. Okay, on one level, they may be right. The other thing is, if I had my druthers, I would have said, hey, Nintendo, I thought you were about revolutionizing the way games are to be played and experienced. For myself, I given that I'm a new adopter, if you will, of a Switch machine, I have a Switch 1. It's like, sorry, from my vantage point, there isn't enough for me to adopt a Switch 2 because it goes, well, how is this set apart from the Switch 1? How does it make me experience a game or a set of games differently than X? So that's part of my nerding out in terms of how do I want to experience a game. I mean, if I wanted to really nerd out on how to experience game X, Y, or Z. So, for example, if I wanted to say if I maintain my genres, I'll toss a few out there for you guys. So, a shooter or FPS, a racer, flight sim like Ace Combat. I would need to get a wheel. I would need to get I have a joystick, and I would have to get. Trying to think. What would be a third? It would be a. See, it's weird. It's interesting. Yeah, the funny thing about technology is someone maybe it's like there's something to be said. Apple may not have been the first to do X, but it's marketing for whatever reason. And yeah, you can call them sheeple, but they do it in such a way that gives the impression they are the first when they were not. Or they market it in such a way they make that feature workable. Let's see, pedals, wheel, and a flight stick. Yep. It's like if I could, I would. It reminded me when I watched the Gran Turismo movie with I don't know the actors' names. I'm bad with that. But when I saw him play the game, and I remember when my buddy also got himself an arcade cabinet of Tekken. Now, if I could have done that for like fill in the blank racing game, what would you have gone? Like if you had a choice of arcade racer, would you have gone with the Ridge Racer, Virtua Racing, or Daytona USA, or the Cruising Series? Something about Daytona USA. I think the problem with virtual racing for me, I don't know if it was a function of the cabinet or lack thereof, but the audio wasn't engaging. I don't know if that was the intention or not. Daytona USA hooked me. Ridge Racer, I warmed up to. I think I warmed up to it more on the PlayStation itself. But Daytona USA, because of how they set it up, depending on what arcade you went to, I think when we made our trips to Vegas, Daytona USA was set up like a spectacle. You talk about sinking in your dollars, literally. And it's like, see, that's the thing. Like, we talk about slices of the pie. For me, on the surface, you look at racing games or games. What are the slices of a pie that you would pay attention to in a game? And it goes back to Game Pro's rating system. I think they had 5 tiers: sound, graphics, control, and fun factor. I forget the other criteria. But let's see. Oh yeah, I would have a cruising machine. Oh, okay. And yes, the Star Wars Pod Racer. I remember playing the, I think it was in the mid '90s. It was a relatively modern version of a Star Wars game. I forget the subtitle to it, but it it might have been Star Wars the arcade game. I don't know if that was the subtitle to it, but it was a Star Wars game, and I forgot if you're piloting an aircraft. But again, it's just like one of those things that this is why I loved going to the arcades, because you experience the game, you experience playing the game in a certain way that engaged you. Like I remember playing Afterburner and other games like Outrun. RC Pro-Am, I don't know. It's funny when I go to a place like Wonderland at the time and you get the free play series. That's one, I don't know if they still have them, but Wonderland was a trip. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And, and anyway, that's what it comes down to a lot of the time is, I don't know if games have plateaued, but it's like how better are we going to be able to experience a game outside of VR? I still remember watching Lawnmower Man and other VR inspired things. I remember virtual reality trying to be a thing. And I don't know how much time you spent on the Virtual Boy, if you did, Matt Cave, but I think I tried it once and it just set me through a weird mental trip. I think it got me dizzy. And I think I tried playing, I think it was Batman Arkham on my friend's PlayStation VR setup he had at the time. Yeah, and it's weird. It got me through a mental trip. So I'm not alone. Good to know. So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are. Like I know people are trying to get into. I know Meta. I will never call. I refuse. Meta is to me like a separate thing on its own. Yeah, that's the parent company of Coop Base. But I know Meta's trying to sell their headset, and I forgot the other one. I think it was Oculus or something. But I don't know about VR guys, but I don't know. I know the Wii was trying to be a good gimmick and with the Wiimote and no, I can't either. I don't see myself playing VR for any more than 20 minutes. It just I tried playing the thing and it's a weird thing when it comes to coordination, at least for me, because I was trying to make sense of how to use it mechanically speaking. I'm immersed into the game and I'm trying to keep my head straight with respect to controls. You know what I mean? And it's just part of me enjoys a good game where you're using your controller. I like a good controller. And I don't know about you, Matt K, but to me, the worst controller is still the N64 controller. I know, I may be wrong, but I remember playing that or using it. I got used to it, but it's not my favorite. I think my favorite would have to be the Xbox. Uh, 361. Let's see. I spent the most time in the VR for the game. No, I hear you. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I just, yeah, it's funny, like, and I remember, I don't know about you in 3D in movies. I don't know what it would take for a well done 3D movie. I don't think I've ever came across a 3D movie I want to watch again. I still remember I think my first exposure to a 3D experience with the 3D glasses was Captain EO in Disneyland. And until then, it's like 3D is a gimmick. I don't know about you. I think 3D is a gimmick. I can't do 3D movies, and it's like I like a good movie. Period. I don't know. I like a good screen. I think a good screen still counts for something. Like when I go to an IMAX screen, yeah, I can tell. I can tell the difference, and especially when there was a homework assignment when I was doing theater and audio. No, it was audio. It was an audio class I took in college that they asked us to go to a movie, observe the audio quality, and in my mind, nowadays I'm looking at the screen quality. So for me, I can tell there's a clear difference between standard screens, IMAX screens, and so on. The only good 3D experience I had was speaking of Avatar, I don't know about you, man, but I think after the first Avatar, I called it good. I didn't need another Avatar. Because, honestly, the. Call me what you will, but I wasn't fond of the aesthetic. I did not like the aesthetic. Character art, not my jam. I didn't need to see another Avatar. No. The Avatar I think I enjoyed, kinda, was the M. Night Shyamalan Avatar Last Airbender. But it's almost like I gotta do a reset. I gotta watch from zero because I was aware of Avatar The Last Airbender back in the day. I think it was on Nickelodeon. Was it the late 90s or early aughts? I wasn't sure. But by then, I think I go, that's kiddie. I may have been wrong, but sure. I gave up watching. I grew up watching both Friday the 13th 3D and. Well, that's cool. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so there. I don't know. I go between animated and live action. I'm not sure what to think when it comes to that stuff. Like, for example, I thought the live action Kenshin movies were decent. And this is coming from someone who knew of the animated Kenshin. Not that I didn't like it. And this is just me, and I think I've mentioned multiple times that I grow in and out of stuff. So there might have been a period where I checked out a lot of anime. I don't know if it's because I'm too old for this or that's too young for me. But that's so when like the One Piece. I may get on that. I may not. I mean, like I think I mentioned multiple times, my exposure to One Piece was working at a .com where I had to look up games. I had to do website maintenance, keywords, and they were trying to push plushes, figures, things like that. But I never got into the titles. Maybe it's because I think I got exposed to so much crap, even then, that I kind of soured and I kind of got numb. But I'll say, I think I might have mentioned I actually binged Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex recently. I think in the last 5, 6 months. And let's see. I tried watching One Piece. My son showed it to me, but yeah, yep, I get it, man. That might be one of those things I have to keep in mind. Like, I think I said in one of my impromptus, I tipped my hat to that fat samurai guy because I don't think he's one of those angry types when it comes to bad stuff. I appreciate him because he's able to get access or is trusted enough to have interviews with various actors, producers. Like he had the Kasugi brothers, the sons of Sho Kasugi of the Ninja series, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja. He had his sons on. And I'm trying to get access to their movie Seek. And I don't know. It's something I've been wanting to watch because it made me so excited about ninja lore again. And he also did a recent interview with one of the stars of a movie I got on Prime, Gladiator Underground. And no, would I recommend it? The critic in me would say no. I wouldn't recommend it. If I were to recommend a martial arts movie on Prime, if I had to say within the current crop, I don't think I said anything about this movie yet. I intended to months ago. It was called Life After Fighting. I didn't know what to expect, but it's gritty, and I think there's something to be said about going back to the nerding in, nerding out. When I watched Gladiator Underground, I didn't know what it was trying to be. So these little details about movies, putting the pieces, making sure they fit into a cohesive whole, it's harder than it sounds. And so when I watched Gladiator Underground, I didn't know what kind of movie it was trying to be. It was like I think I mentioned in my last impromptu, it was like The Running Man meets Bloodsport. Let's see which we got here. The anime that I ended up liking. Ah, Assassination. I think that's. I will keep that one in mind. But when it comes to. It's funny because when it comes to film, shows, whatever, take your pick. I like a good popcorn movie as much as the next person, where I don't have to put my critic's hat on, but sometimes that critic gets triggered, if that makes sense. My inner critic comes into play, gets triggered, gets inspired, and sends questions in my mind. I go, did you have to go that route? So, for example, the movie, it's set in a non-American land. It's like, I don't know if it's a fictional land, but it's like a land, possibly Southeast Asia. I don't know if it was quite Hong Kong, but based on the dialogue, it's almost as though I wish they would have either stuck with English or they could have gone completely Cantonese. I'm perfectly okay with that. Because if you're setting in a foreign land, I would kind of hope that you would kind of reflect that in the dialogue. And then setting up the underground vibe, I thought that seemed a little out of place. And what made it a little more out of place is the dynamic with the protagonist's teacher going in between English and Cantonese. It didn't get the setting right because of that, in my mind, anyway. It just didn't set the stage well. And the way they depicted the underground personnel, it was like they were trying to set up some mystical motif that didn't really fit. And what made it worse was they tried to portray the slummy area and and the dialogue, which is bad in my mind. Like it didn't know what it wanted to be. It wanted to be. Again, it's just like how do the pieces fit into the overall picture? Let's see. Just have that experience when I went to see. Oh, you went and saw that total popcorn movie, but I couldn't help but let my I am with you. The like the one thing I appreciated about Godzilla minus one is for someone who's a I will admit I think I'm a Godzilla normie in that I knew of Godzilla but I never really grew the fandom. I had a family friend of ours, like a classmate of my mom's, her son was really into that. I remember, having my interactions with him in childhood. He was big into that stuff, and I was aware of Godzilla the cartoon, but I never really grew the fandom he had. I didn't appreciate it the same way he did. Godzilla minus one was a total popcorn movie because it didn't ask me to be a Godzilla fan. And Godzilla played his role or its role, and he had his place. But the movie was such that I was into the entire movie, and it's the same with Gran Turismo. Like there is a point, like I don't know about you, Matt Cave, if you're still watching. Like I don't know if I grew past Gran Turismo the game, but I got to see that end or that section or that part of Gran Turismo as a game, but that didn't really. I said, okay, that'd be nice. That's nice. But there was a point in my life where I think I stopped playing Gran Turismo and so forth. It wasn't in my gaming radar. But the story, the experience pulled me in. And talk about a popcorn movie. I was engaged throughout because it was more about the experience of a guy aspiring to be X and going through his struggles. That's that's what sucked me in. Yes, I agree. Like again, that the slices of the pie, Godzilla minus one hit me from the most basic pie setup. I think the visuals, the sound, and the character dynamics and the dialogue. Talk about, having a complete circle, complete whole. That's what minus one did for me. And the same thing with F. Talk about another popcorn movie, F1. F1 had enough slices of the pie where things just fit. You know, I don't know if it's Brad Pitt or if it's how the movie was written, how the movie was directed. It worked. That was a popcorn movie also. Probably my favorite movie in the summer. It's a fun movie. If you can get it for a decent price, if you're into that, or if you're just gonna rent it, it's a good popcorn flick. Uh, because if you're like, it goes back to our gateways. Like, I'm not into NASCAR or I'm not into F1, but playing the games kind of gives me a little bit of access to it. So, like, I'm not one to watch, say, F1 on TV, NASCAR on TV, other races like that, golf even. But I played my golf games on the NES. I think I even, when I was sailing the high seas, if you quote unquote, I did procure a copy of Tiger Woods Golf for the PC. And we might have had it on the PS2, another way of traversing the high seas as well. I forget if we had it on PS1 or PS2. But like movies like Days of Thunder, F1, I don't know about Fast and the Furious. I don't know if you would consider it a racing movie. It was a car movie. But Talladega Nights, if you ain't first, you're last. If you ain't cheating, you're not trying. Shake and bake. But it's one of those things. I don't think, in terms of horse racing, it's funny. I did play I think it was like Sport of Kings was the computer game I played for horse racing. And I've gone to my share of trips to Del Mar, where they have the horse racing season. And watching it live can be a bit of a ruckus. Like I said, talking about the experience, broadcasting, announcing, that announcer, I don't know how much he gets paid, but he does a good job. Get you into it. So, you know, they talk about those gateways. Even though, on the whole, that not be your jam. Um, but yeah, it's very interesting when we think about the slices of the pie of whatever it is. Like, trying to think of another movie. Mario Brothers, the Mario Brothers movie. That was interesting. I thought all the pieces were great until I realized who played what, and I couldn't shake off the fact Seth Rogen played Donkey Kong. Like, oh, great. It was perfect until I realized who played Donkey Kong. And I don't know if it ruined my whole thought about the movie. It was fine. And again, it goes to that tension or that dynamic. Do I want to see a live action adaptation or an animated one? I still don't get why people feel there's a need to do a live adaptation of whatever. Like, as far as, let's see. Because we had examples like The Incredibles, the Disney animated movies. I don't know if I call them bangers, but they were successful. I remember when the VHSs came out at the time. We drank that stuff like soup. We sat in front of our TVs at the time. We didn't care if it was like an hour plus or hour and a half. It was enjoyable. So, that if I were to do any kind of lamenting, it's why do we need this again? Why do we need a live action? It's like when they tried to do Double Dragon. Outside of Alyssa Milano, there wasn't a reason for me to get excited. The new Mario movie was cool. I will also, I will always have a place in my heart for the one with Leguizamo and I don't know what the other guy's name. Oh, Dennis Hopper, that one I know. But the guy who played Mario, I think Leguizamo was Luigi in the movie. That was my guess. But I still, I still chuckle when I think about it. After watching He-Man with Lundgren, how I conned, I don't know if it was me, but we conned my mom and our family friends to drive us to the drive-in when we were kids, saw that movie, and I go, how the hell did we manage to con them to get us to watch that movie more than twice? I still chuckle at that. I guess I can say, we didn't know any better. and and it's interesting. And I usually roll with this: do it right, do it well, not make it about you. And going back to the tension between live action and animated is like the Ninja Turtles movie is like a classic. And yeah, were there levels of ridiculousness with each sequel? Sure, I'll admit. Yep, yeah. I don't. It's just like, okay, but I don't know if you saw it, but I don't know if it's legit. But apparently, doing Captain N. That's the other thing I get a little annoyed with nowadays is, well, that could have been brought to our attention yesterday, kind of thing, when it comes to these sequels. Now you come up with one? It's like when people talk about a possible Kirby movie. That would have flown if that was brought to our attention when we were growing up, man. I think we're just within the same year or two of each other. And Kirby was 1990-ish. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt Cave. I think that's when they started pushing this stuff. I think it was like Game Boy, and then he was he Game Boy first or was he NES first? But Kirby was fun for however long it was fun. I don't think he has the enduring impact. I don't know if Yoshi still has an enduring impact. I don't know about you. I like if that's rumored. I don't know if people still like Kirby. Turned 43 this year and had a TMNT. Nice. See, it's funny. There is a time and place to rehash characters who still have impact. You know, like I don't know if Kirby still has the impact we had when we were kids. It was a fun shtick. It was like you swallowed something and you spit it out. I think that was Kirby, right? I think Yoshi was similar, but he was part of a bigger picture via Mario. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if there's real demand. I understand you want to try to milk the cow, but you got to choose what cow you're going to milk. Get my drift? I don't know. Yeah, Kirby was fun, but I never got. No, I thought Kirby was fun for what it was. My sister was the one who had the Game Boy, and we go, hey, sis, mind if I play Kirby or whatever? But he wasn't a character we all wanted to bandy around. I think the funny thing is, I don't know if Nintendo has this internal tension, whether they want to admit it or not. They should just stick with their identity, and I think they've done that. They know who their face is. I like to think Mario is still their face. Sega, unfortunately, I think they think Sonic is still its face, but because they're out of the limelight in the way they are, and that they're primarily a game developer now. And I know they have the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, which I don't know whether or not I want to see, but the lasting power of Sonic, I don't know if it's a niche now, but at least in terms of mascot power, Mario still does it. He's still kind of the face of Nintendo. And I don't know how Sony has done it, but PlayStation had a face with Crash Bandicoot, but I think they kind of walked back on that. I don't know about you, Matt Cape. I don't know if you think Sony has had a face for the PlayStation. It's almost as though take your pick. They are turn your brain off. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. But I would have. I don't know if I would have killed for a Bonk movie. I thought Bonk was cool in the TurboGrafx days, and I think there might have been a PC adaptation. I'm not sure if there was or not, but I remember walking around the floor of the Navy Exchange, speaking as a spoiled Navy brat. Interesting how they. And I never knew about this until I started working retail or been inundated with retail stuff. But they always reinvent the wheel in terms of floor layout. And I remember being inundated with various sections. So they had a clear PC section, and what I loved about it is you got to play. Uh oh, incoming call. Outside of Crash Bandicoot, Sony seemed to never right settle on a mascot. All right, guys, I might have to take this call. I don't know if it's gonna. Oh, all right. Well, I'm still getting used to YouTube on my phone, and it seems less legwork when it comes to setting things up. Like part of my inspiration for redoing my Linux system is just making sure I can install certain applications. Like I used to use OBS, maybe not so consistently, but I liked it as an option. Yep, yep. It was just a quick call. Like I said, getting used to the whole YouTube on my mobile. Still getting used to it. Still trying to see what it does, how to make sense of it. um, but yeah, it seems less of a hassle. I could probably do it through EVMux, but it's just well, I don't have to go through many steps. You know, I'm at a point where I kind of want to cut that down, kiss it, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with that. Um, I don't know. Plus, it gives me a chance to just unload, if that makes sense. Just get it out of my head and onto, as I'm saying nowadays, from my head to the screen, to the ears, to the head, or to the mind. Um, because I could script things. It's just that knowing how my mind works and how I'm disposed, I can get obsessive easily, and I can be my own worst critic, to be honest. And I still remember, and I think I might have mentioned it in previous videos, where I had done stuff for my last employer, trying to do things for a webinar, or at least try to get accredited for CPE credits, and I was like on take 30, something along those lines. We're like, take whatever, redo, and yeah, that's a lot of work, but I don't do YouTube full time. I'm still debating if that's something I want to make a goal out of, because in certain ways for me, YouTube is a little bit more cathartic than it is. How do I describe it? Occupational. All right, man. Well, thanks again for engaging. I think I gotta cut it as well. So all of you who have been tuning in, lurking, whatever, appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to spitball as usual during these impromptus. So I'll catch you all on the other side. Peace out in the meantime, guys.